Eli stepped out of the portal and back into the Alfheim facility, where Rose and Derren were already waiting. The moment she stabilized, she reached for her comm unit, connecting directly to the war room. "Gunner, it's Eli. We've completed the first sweep. Sending you the data now." Gunner's voice came through, sharp and direct. "Go ahead. What's the status?" Eli pulled up her tablet, her fingers moving quickly over the display as she relayed the drone's footage and scanned reports verbally over the comms. The underground chamber is intact. Structural integrity is solid. No cave-ins, no magical interference, no immediate threats. The portal's stable. Shade and Katrina are still inside, but so far, we're alone down there. Rose, arms crossed, leaned in. "What about exits? What's our way out?" Eli exhaled. "That's where things get complicated. We found a passage leading deeper, several rooms filled with old crates, probably storage from whatever this place used to be. But at the far end there was another set of doors. Shade opened them and—" She hesitated. "The stairwell beyond is completely collapsed. There's no clear way up." A heavy silence settled over the room before Gunner spoke again. "So we're boxed in?" "For now," Eli confirmed, "which means our plan to excavate from the chamber is still the best option. We'll need to dig our way out carefully and reinforce as we go. But that's not all." "Exactly," Eli confirmed. "I don't know if it's just more ruins or something Draven's people sealed away. We'll need to decide if we want to crack them open." Derren, leaning against the console, smirked. "So, to recap, no clear exit, possible treasure trove, and the risk of waking up something nasty in the process. Sounds about right." Gunner exhaled. "All right. We stick to the plan. Everyone get your gear. We're moving soon. Derren, get your battalion moving. Make sure every soldier has signed their NDA and security clearance before they deploy. We'll need their equipment prepped ASAP. Eli, stay on standby in case we need magical reinforcement. Clara, prep the perimeter teams. We'll need to be ready in case Black Dawn has eyes on this place." His voice came through the comms again. "And you," Rose smirked. "I'm staying here. Katrina and Shade are still searching through the crates. If there's anything useful, I want to be there when they find it." Gunner's expression was unreadable for a moment before he nodded. "Fine. But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks. We dig carefully, and we figure out what we're dealing with before we touch those doors. We'll rendezvous at the chamber soon." Eli tapped her comm unit, closing the feed. "Understood. We'll be ready." Derren turned to Gunner, adjusting his gear. "All right, I've got to round up my engineers and make sure everything's in order. Try not to break anything while I'm gone." Eli exhaled, tucking away her tablet. "I'll make sure the portal stays stable while we're running ops. If anything shifts, we'll know before we step into a death trap." Gunner's voice crackled through the comms once more. "We move within the hour. Get everything locked down. No loose ends. I want regular updates." Derren gave a mock salute. "Copy that, boss." Rose rolled her shoulders and turned back to the portal. "All right, let's get back to work. Katrina and Shade are waiting." Derren moved through the staging area, scanning the progress the 5077th Engineering Battalion had made over the past week. The once-scarred battlefield was now leveled and reinforced, with new command structures rising where chaos once reigned. The engineers had done their job well, and the skeleton of the base was taking shape. Life support systems were being installed, and within a few more days, this place would be fully operational. As he passed through, soldiers and engineers gave him respectful nods, recognizing him as someone with authority even if he was no longer in uniform. The battalion had been instrumental in clearing the battlefield and constructing the forward base, though they still had no idea what they were truly working around. That was about to change. Inside the command post, the battalion commander, Colonel Vasquez, and the command sergeant major, CSM Holt, were waiting for him. Both were seasoned veterans. Vasquez had seen decades of combat engineering work, while Holt was the backbone of the battalion's operations. Derren shut the door behind him, nodding to Colonel Vasquez and Command Sergeant Major Holt. "Colonel, Sergeant Major, appreciate you making time. I need you both in the war room for a classified briefing. Gunner wants you fully up to speed on what's really going on out here. Vasquez gave him a measured look. You're being real careful with your words, Derren. That tells me whatever this is, it's big. Derren smirked faintly. Let's just say you're about to get some answers, and they might change the way you see this mission. Vasquez stood, curiosity flickering in his eyes. All right, let's see what kind of classified mess you're dropping us into. Derren nodded and opened the door. This way. Time's short, and we've got a lot to cover. With a nod, Derren led them toward the war room, knowing full well that by the end of this briefing, everything Vasquez and Holt thought they knew about this mission, and the world, was about to change. The war room was an impressive sight, far more advanced than anything Vasquez or Holt had expected. Holographic displays hovered over the large strategic table, providing real-time data on the surrounding terrain, active operations, and the developing base. Alongside them, physical maps and reports were neatly organized, reinforcing the high-tech yet grounded nature of the Pack's operations. Vasquez and Holt took in the sight, their eyes flicking between the cutting-edge technology and the seasoned warriors seated around the table. This was no ordinary war room. As Derren stepped inside with Vasquez and Holt, their eyes immediately locked onto Gunner. The man at the head of the table was an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, and carrying the weight of countless battles in his hardened stance. His left arm, a sleek cybernetic limb, rested casually on the table, its polished surface catching the dim light. The tech was unlike anything either of them had seen before. Holt muttered under his breath, "Well, damn, that's new." Gunner's one blue eye settled on them, unreadable. "Colonel Vasquez, Command Sergeant Major Holt," he greeted, his voice firm. "Take a seat." Vasquez sat slowly, exchanging a look with Holt. "All right, Derren, we're here. Start talking." Derren exhaled, leaning against the edge of the table. "You've been here a week, cleaning up the battlefield, setting up the base." A heavy pause settled over the room. Derren nodded toward Vasquez. "Colonel, before we get into anything deeper, let's start with the current status of Base X. Please give us a full situational report." Vasquez exchanged a glance with Holt before turning to Gunner. "All right, here's what we have so far." He pulled out a large map and a folder of documents, spreading them across the table. Base X is at 70% completion. The battlefield has been fully cleared, and structural reinforcements for the command center are in place. The barracks and supply depots are functional, but life support systems are still being calibrated. We estimate another 72 hours before full operational readiness. Holt leaned forward. "Power grid is stable, and we've run infrastructure checks across the site. No major structural weaknesses, but we're still stress testing the foundations before finalizing expansions. We've also got our security teams running scheduled patrols, but nothing outside the ordinary so far." A brief silence followed as Gunner absorbed the report. Then, he leaned back slightly and gave Derren a look, one that Derren recognized immediately. It was time to start easing them into the truth. Derren cleared his throat. "All right, good. That means we're in a stable position to move forward. But now we need to talk about the bigger picture, because Base X isn't just sitting on an old battlefield." Vasquez raised an eyebrow. "Here we go." Derren smirked. "Yeah, here we go. You ever hear of Alfheim?" Holt frowned. "Sounds like something out of a fantasy novel." Before Derren could respond, the door to the war room opened and Eli stepped in. She was dressed in her usual field gear, her silver hair tucked beneath a cap, but the second she entered, the tension in the room shifted. There was something about her presence, sharp, perceptive, like she was sizing up Vasquez and Holt just as much as they were sizing up her. Holt gave a slow nod. "All right. And you are?" Derren leaned back, arms crossed, and smirked. "Oh, you're going to love this part." Gunner remained silent, watching as Eli removed her cap, letting her silver hair fall free, revealing her pointed ears. The room went dead quiet. Vasquez blinked, his expression unreadable, while Holt let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. This some kind of joke? Some new experimental gene-modding program? Because I've seen some weird classified tech in my time, but pointed ears ain't on the list. Derren smirked. Oh, trust me, you're taking this better than I did. I at least had the courtesy to freak out a little. Before either of them could respond, a deep, rumbling growl echoed from the hallway. A moment later, the door swung open again, and Alpha stepped inside. The massive wolf's piercing yellow eyes locked onto Vasquez and Holt, his imposing form filling the doorway. His gait was slow, deliberate, assessing, judging. Holt stiffened, hands hovering near his belt. Derren? You want to tell me why there's a damn dire wolf in here looking at me like I'm lunch? Derren clapped him on the shoulder with a grin. Relax. If he wanted you dead, you wouldn't have heard the door open. Alpha let out a soft huff, his gaze never wavering. Vasquez, to his credit, held his ground, though his fingers were gripping the edge of the table just a little tighter. Eli stepped forward, placing a calm hand on Alpha's thick fur. It's all right, she murmured. And with that, the massive wolf let out a final exhale before lowering himself onto the floor beside her, his posture relaxed but his eyes still watching the two officers. She turned to Vasquez and Holt. I imagine this is a lot to take in, but let's start simple. My name is Eli, and I'm an elf from Alfheim. Our people have made an alliance with Earth, an alliance that has already saved lives on both sides. She let the weight of her words settle before continuing. I know this isn't what you expected when you were sent here, but there's more you need to see. Gunnar finally pushed himself up from his seat. Come with me. Vasquez and Holt exchanged a wary glance but stood, following Gunnar as he led them toward a secure corridor at the back of the war room. Derren fell in beside them, his usual smirk in place. The walk through the facility was longer than expected. Vasquez and Holt took in their surroundings, reinforced walls lined with runes and symbols they didn't recognize, layered security systems, and checkpoints that required multiple forms of clearance. The deeper they went, the more it became clear that this wasn't a standard military installation. Vasquez slowed, eyes narrowing at a set of glowing etchings along one of the walls. What the hell is that? Eli, walking just ahead, answered smoothly. Wards. Protective enchantments. They help secure the facility. Holt scoffed. Enchantment? You mean, like magic? Derren grinned, not missing a beat. Yep. And trust me, it works better than your standard security cameras. Holt and Vasquez exchanged looks, both clearly unsettled, but neither spoke as they pressed on. As they neared the reinforced doors, Derren casually said, Either of you ever seen Stargate? Holt frowned. What? Derren gestured ahead. Because this is the part where you either step through and expand your understanding of reality, or you start questioning every choice that led you here. Either way, it's going to be fun. The heavy security doors hissed open, revealing the portal chamber beyond, and with it, a sight neither Vasquez nor Holt was prepared for. Inside, two elven guards stood at attention, clad in finely crafted armor, their expressions neutral but watchful. Their presence alone was enough to set Vasquez and Holt on edge. Beyond them, the room was dominated by a massive circular structure, runes glowing softly along its edges. Vasquez and Holt barely had time to take in the sight before Gunnar stepped forward, activating the console. A shimmering gateway of energy roared to life, casting the chamber in an ethereal glow. Eli crossed her arms, glancing toward the officers. Now, do you believe me? Gunnar motioned for them to follow. We're not stopping here. Step through. Vasquez and Holt hesitated for only a second before moving forward. The energy of the portal rippled as Gunnar stepped through first, disappearing into the glow. Eli followed, then Derren, who glanced over his shoulder at the two officers and smirked. Try not to puke. First time can be a little weird. With that, he stepped in, vanishing into the light. Vasquez exhaled sharply and muttered, This is insane. Holt grumbled, Yeah. And yet here we go. Together they stepped through. The transition was disorienting, like moving through a current of light and pressure before it abruptly released them onto solid ground. The air was different, crisper, ancient, alive. Before them stood Eliana Vale, regal and calm, her piercing blue eyes watching them with measured interest. Behind her, sprawling in the distance, was the breathtaking realm of Alfheim, lush greenery, towering crystalline spires, and a sky painted in soft golden hues. It was a world untouched by modern industry, pulsing with magic in ways the two officers had never imagined. Eliana inclined her head slightly. Welcome to Alfheim. Holt barely managed to shut his mouth while Vasquez muttered under his breath, Well, I'll be damned. Before either of them could fully process their surroundings, Eliana turned, raising her hand to another gateway shimmering behind her. This way. There's someone waiting for you. The moment to take in Alfheim was brief, before they were rushed forward once again, stepping through the next portal. The portal deposited them inside a dimly lit chamber, the soft hum of magic thrumming through the air. At the far end of the room, Rose sat at the control console, her fingers idly tapping against the surface as she studied the readings. Two elven guards flanked the entrance, their expressions neutral but alert. Derren stepped forward, his usual smirk forming as he took in the sight of Rose at work. Well, well, look at you. All official and stuff. Didn't know they let troublemakers run the show. Rose didn't even glance up. And yet, they let you in here, so I guess the standards aren't that high. Eli sighed, shaking her head. Great. We're back to this. Gunnar exhaled sharply. Focus. We've got work to do. Rose finally looked up from the console, acknowledging Vasquez and Holt with a slight nod. So, these are the new guys? Hope they like surprises. Without waiting for a response, she turned back to the console and began the process of opening the next portal. The runes embedded into the stone pulsed in sync with her movements, the energy rippling through the air as she adjusted the power flow. The two elven guards remained stationed at the entrance, silent but ever watchful. As the portal began to form, Rose glanced over at Derren. Try not to fall on your face this time. Derren smirked. You wound me. I was graceful as hell last time. The portal stabilized, revealing the Mirkdust site on the other side. Shade, Katrina, and a group of elven technicians were just finishing setting up lighting, their figures visible through the shifting gateway. The cavern beyond looked stable, but the atmosphere remained heavy with tension. Rose stood, brushing off her hands. She glanced over at Vasquez and Holt, who were looking a little worse for wear. Their faces had taken on a pale tinge, and they swayed just slightly, as if their stomachs hadn't quite caught up with the rest of them. She smirked. Oh, don't tell me you two are getting queasy already. That was what? Your second portal jump today? Holt grumbled, pinching the bridge of his nose. Feels like my insides are on a delay. Vasquez took a steadying breath, muttering, This is not normal. Derren, ever helpful, clapped Vasquez on the back. Don't worry. First 10 times are the worst. After that, you only feel like puking every other jump. Rose chuckled, turning back to the console. All right, go make some history. And try not to fall over when you land. The portal flared as the team emerged into the underground chamber in Mirkdust. The space was now illuminated by newly installed lighting, casting long shadows against the ancient stone walls. The air was thick with the scent of dust and old magic. Shade and Katrina were waiting, standing near a makeshift work table where various artifacts and equipment had been arranged. A few elven technicians moved about, securing power sources for additional lights and preparing tools for excavation. Shade crossed his arms as the group stepped through. Welcome to the party. Took you long enough. Katrina smirked, nodding toward the portal behind them. And I see you brought some fresh faces. Derren rolled his shoulders. Yeah, figured we'd let the new guys get their feet wet. Vasquez and Holt were still taking in their surroundings, visibly on edge but keeping their composure. Gunnar, noticing their pale expressions, raised an eyebrow. "You two need a moment?" Vasquez took a steadying breath. "No, sir, just adjusting." One of the elven technicians, overhearing the exchange, stepped forward and handed them each a small, ornate flask. "Drink this. It will help." Holt hesitated, sniffing the liquid suspiciously before taking a tentative sip. His eyes widened slightly as a warmth spread through him, settling the nausea almost instantly. Vasquez followed suit, exhaling in relief. "All right. That's surprisingly effective. What is it?" The elf merely smiled. "A remedy for portal sickness. Ancient recipe." Gunnar exhaled and motioned for Vasquez and Holt to follow. "All right, listen up. We have a job to do here, and it's not just sifting through old artifacts. We need to clear the stairwell to the surface. That's priority one." As he led them further into the chamber, he gestured toward the far end where a collapsed passage loomed. "This is our only way up. We need a controlled excavation, nothing that risks bringing the whole place down on us. Your engineers will coordinate with the elven technicians to stabilize the structure as we clear it." CSM Holt, arms crossed, frowned at the blocked passage. "Why not just portal straight to the surface? Seems a hell of a lot easier." Gunnar's expression didn't change. "That information is classified." Holt opened his mouth to press further but thought better of it. Instead, he exchanged a glance with Vasquez, who gave a subtle nod of understanding. Whatever the reason, they weren't getting an answer here. "All right," Vasquez said. "Then let's get to work." Gunnar nodded. "Good. Now I need your input. How many troops can you spare for this operation? I need men who are not only capable but also trustworthy. We can't afford leaks or mistakes." Vasquez considered for a moment before responding. "We'll have to evaluate our available personnel, but I can put together a detachment that meets your criteria." "Do it," Gunnar said. "I also want a list of required supplies. Tools, reinforcement materials, rations, whatever you need to get this done efficiently and safely." Holt straightened. "Understood. We'll need to coordinate with our logistics officers and the engineers on site." Gunnar's gaze was firm. "I expect a full briefing in the morning. I want your team ready to deploy by noon." He let the weight of his words settle before continuing, his voice quieter but no less intense. "And let me be clear, this is classified beyond anything you've encountered before. If this ever got out, the damage it could cause would be catastrophic." A brief silence followed. Vasquez and Holt exchanged glances, the gravity of the situation settling in. Whatever they had stepped into was bigger than anything they had ever handled. The classified nature wasn't just protocol, it was absolute necessity. Vasquez glanced at Holt before speaking. "Sir, do we have any intelligence on what caused the collapse? Was it natural, or should we expect interference?" Gunnar's expression remained unreadable. "We don't take chances. Assume the worst and be ready for anything." Holt frowned. "What's the time frame on excavation? Are we expecting a days-long dig, or will the elven tech speed things up?" Eli, who had been listening, chimed in. "With the right balance of structural reinforcements and controlled removal, we can make progress faster than conventional methods. But this isn't something we can rush. Stability comes first." Vasquez nodded. "Understood. One last thing. What's the fallback plan if something goes wrong?" Gunnar's expression remained firm. "The portal is our only way in and out. There's no backup escape route, so we don't take unnecessary risks. And one more thing, never enter both sides at the same time. This portal works one way at a time. If someone tries to step through from both ends simultaneously, best case scenario, nothing happens. Worst case, you don't want to find out." Derren smirked, leaning slightly toward Vasquez and Holt. "Yeah. So, ever seen Men in Black? Don't make me flash you." Vasquez narrowed his eyes slightly, unsure if Derren was joking or not. "Wait, that's not actually a thing, right?" Holt let out a skeptical grunt. "Considering everything else we've seen today, I'm not ruling anything out. Derren clapped a hand on Holt's shoulder, grinning. Relax. You'll only forget this conversation if you do something stupid. Gunnar let the moment settle before nodding. All right, gentlemen. That's enough for tonight. Get some rest. I expect your full briefing in the morning and your team ready to deploy by noon. Derren walked through the dimly lit corridors of the temporary command structure, hands tucked into his pockets, his usual smirk replaced with something more subdued. He had been around enough military bases to know when men were unsettled, and tonight, he had no doubt the 5077th had more than a few uneasy minds after the war room briefing. He found CSM Holt in a makeshift office, seated at a table with a thick stack of reports and a half-empty cup of coffee. The man didn't look up immediately, but Derren knew he'd heard him coming. You lost, civilian, Holt asked dryly, flipping a page without looking up. Derren snorted, stepping inside and leaning against the doorframe. Didn't think I needed a map to check in on an old warhorse. You good, Holt? The sergeant major finally glanced up, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion evident on his face. Been better, been worse. He leaned back in his chair. You here to give me the real rundown on what the hell we just signed up for? Derren crossed his arms. You ever know me to sugarcoat anything? Holt huffed. Fair enough. So, what's the angle here? Magic? Portals? Elves? I mean, I got the official line, but you and I both know there's always more under the surface. His gaze darkened slightly as he leaned forward. And another thing, I know what a war zone looks like, Derren. My men have been clearing that battlefield all week, but today I walked past the workshop and saw scorch marks, marks that weren't made by conventional firearms. I've seen enough battlefields to know what small arms fire does to a structure. That wasn't it. So tell me, what the hell really happened here? Derren let out a slow breath. Yeah, you're not wrong. And since you're asking, I'll tell you this much. It wasn't just an attack. It was a full-scale incursion. Supernaturals hit us hard. And those scorch marks? Magic. Fire slung by someone who doesn't need a flamethrower to do the job. Holt's jaw tightened. So, you're saying the enemy is packing more than just bullets? He paused, then fixed Derren with a sharp look. And what about Gunnar? He's asking me to put my men on the line for this. I've worked under plenty of commanders who had their own vendettas, guys who were willing to risk lives chasing personal ghosts. Is he one of them? Or can I actually trust that he knows what he's doing? Derren exhaled sharply, choosing his words carefully. Look, this isn't some rogue faction playing warlord. These guys are well-funded, well-trained, and they know exactly what they're doing. And yeah, they're packing a lot more than just bullets. Derren rubbed the back of his neck, his tone shifting to something more serious. I get why you're asking. You don't know Gunnar, not like I do. But he's not some loose cannon on a personal revenge tour. He's been fighting this war long before the rest of us even knew it existed. And trust me, if he says we need boots on the ground, it's because he's already considered every other option. He met Holt's gaze directly. You're worried he's reckless? He's the opposite. Gunnar doesn't waste lives. He carries every single one he's lost. That's why he fights the way he does. Holt rubbed a hand over his face. Christ. And here I thought dealing with insurgents was complicated. Derren chuckled. Yeah, well, insurgents don't usually hurl fireballs at you. The room fell quiet for a beat before Holt nodded. All right. What do you need from me? Derren pushed off the doorframe and took a step closer. Your best men, people you trust with your life. This op, we can't afford leaks, hesitation, or screw-ups. We need professionals who can handle the unknown and keep their mouths shut. Holt sighed, rubbing his temple. That's a tall order, but I got a few names in mind. Good, Derren said. Sort it out. Gunnar wants a full list by morning. Holt smirked slightly. And here I thought retirement was supposed to make a man soft. Derren grinned, turning toward the door. Nah, just makes us more dangerous. As he stepped out, Holt's voice followed him. You still owe me a drink for this. Derren chuckled. Only if you survive the week. With that, he disappeared into the night, leaving the sergeant major to his thoughts. The next morning, the war room was buzzing with activity as Gunnar stood at the head of the long briefing table, arms crossed, waiting as the final participants filtered in. The large holographic display flickered to life, showing a detailed schematic of the Mirkdust site, overlaid with notes and excavation plans. Derren strolled in, coffee in hand, giving a mock salute before taking his seat. All right, let's get this show on the road. CSM Holt and Captain Vasquez entered next, both looking well-rested but carrying the weight of responsibility. Holt placed a thick folder of personnel files on the table and slid it toward Gunnar. Here's your team. Every name on that list is solid. No liabilities, no weak links. Gunnar took the folder without a word and flipped it open. He scanned the names, nodding slightly. Good. Now let's get into the details. Eli leaned forward, hands clasped together. We have two primary objectives. 1. Clear a stable path to the surface without triggering another collapse. 2. Secure any potential intel or artifacts within the site before any unknown parties can interfere. We don't know who might have had an interest in this site in the past, or who might be watching now, so we assume nothing. Clara, seated next to Eli, added, We'll be coordinating efforts between the elven engineers and the 5077th Combat Engineers to reinforce the structure while excavation is underway. The elves have already started assessing the integrity of the remaining passageways. Holt folded his arms. And what about security? We clearing dirt, or are we expecting company? Gunnar exhaled, resting his hands on the table. We're treating this as a hostile environment until proven otherwise. We don't know who or what might still have an interest in this place, so we assume nothing and keep our guard up. No assumptions. We dig, we secure, and we get out. Vasquez exchanged a look with Holt before nodding. Understood. Gunnar interjected. Security is covered. My team will handle all perimeter and internal security. Clara will be leading a detachment of elven guards, and Omega will be assisting in scouting for any potential threats. Jewel will also be on site, handling medical support. Your men focus on excavation and support. We'll keep everyone safe. Derren leaned back in his chair. All right, so we're walking into a potential death trap full of collapsed tunnels and other fun surprises. Sounds like a great time. Gunnar shot him a look. If you're scared, Derren, you can stay up here and take notes. Derren grinned. Nah, I live for this kind of thing. Holt smirked slightly, but then turned serious again. All right, we have our orders. We'll have teams geared up and ready to move by noon. Anything else before we break? Gunnar glanced around the table. When no one spoke up, he gave a firm nod and stood. We deploy at noon. Get your teams ready. 4 days on the run, and the landscape had changed. Argos and Lyra lay prone on the jagged edge of a rocky cliff, the wind whipping dust around them as they peered down at the sprawling fortress below. The Black Dawn presence had thinned considerably over the last 2 days, their patrols nearly non-existent compared to when they first fled into the wilderness. And yet, here, the fortress was still a fortress. Lyra adjusted the Echo Division-issued binoculars scanning the perimeter. She could see multiple guard towers, heavy turrets, and troop formations moving in tight rotations. Even with Draven pulling his forces back, he hadn't left himself vulnerable. Still thinks sneaking in is an option, Argos muttered beside her, barely above a whisper. Lyra exhaled through her nose, shifting the binoculars slightly. Not unless we suddenly develop the ability to walk through walls. They've sealed this place up tight. Whatever he's planning, he's making sure no one gets in or out. Argos's sharp eyes flicked to Lyra. That mean we're screwed? Lyra shook her head. Not yet, but we're not going anywhere until the pack shows up. They know where to find us. She lowered the binoculars and frowned. Draven pulled all his forces here. That means something. Either he's preparing for a fight, or he's about to leave. The only question is, where the hell is he going? Argos shifted uncomfortably. And more importantly, How do we make sure we're ready when the pack gets here? Lyra raised the binoculars again, watching the fortress gates closely. She hated waiting. Every instinct told her to move, to do something, but she wasn't stupid. Trying to sneak into that fortress was suicide, and she knew it. Still, the idea of just laying here, waiting, made her itch with frustration. Argos shifted beside her, fingers drumming lightly against the rock. Sitting here is getting us nowhere. We've got eyes on the fortress. But what if we're missing something? We could check the portal site, see if anyone's been sniffing around. Lyra didn't answer right away, chewing on the inside of her cheek as she considered. If the pack is coming, staying here gives us the best vantage point. We can track movement, get an idea of what's going on before they arrive. But if Draven's got plans in motion, the portal site might tell us more. Argos exhaled sharply. So which is it? Sit tight and hope we don't miss something, or take the risk and check the portal? Lyra let out a slow breath, weighing the options. Argos glanced at her. How much charge is left in your comm unit? Lyra blinked, then instinctively reached up, feeling the small device still clipped to her gear. Haven't checked. With how long it's been, I doubt it's got much juice left, she frowned. Argos smirked slightly. Well, let's hope it still works when Gunnar shows up. Gunnar sat at his desk, rubbing the bridge of his nose as he reviewed the final logistics reports for the excavation. He had already gone through them twice, but he wasn't about to leave anything to chance. A subtle shift in the air made him look up just as Eliana Vale stepped into his office, her presence as poised and commanding as ever. Dressed in her usual flowing elven robes, she carried an air of effortless grace, but her sharp blue eyes held the weight of urgency. I take it preparations are complete? She asked, closing the door behind her. Gunnar exhaled, leaning back in his chair. As close as they're gonna get. The engineers are prepped, the security teams are in place, and the portal team is ready to deploy at noon. Eliana studied him for a moment, her gaze piercing. And you? Are you ready for what lies ahead? Gunnar scoffed. I don't have the luxury of ready, Eliana. I get the job done. A small smile ghosted across her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. A familiar response, but this excavation isn't just about clearing rubble. There are forces at play that are shifting, and I worry the deeper we dig, the more we may unearth, things that should remain buried. Gunnar crossed his arms. If you're holding something back, now's the time to spill. Eliana hesitated for only a fraction of a second before she spoke. The energy around the Mirkdust site. It's old, but it's stirring. Echoes of something long dormant. My people have sensed it. Gunnar's jaw tightened. That site's been buried for over a century. What kind of echoes are we talking about? That's what I intend to find out, she said. I will be accompanying you. Gunnar arched a brow. Figured you'd say that. Eliana smirked. Figured you wouldn't argue. Gunnar shook his head, pushing up from his chair. Let's get moving, then. It's time. He and Eliana strode through the corridors, their steps purposeful as the base hummed with activity. Soldiers and engineers moved with tense efficiency, finalizing preparations for the operation. The weight of the upcoming mission loomed over everyone, but Gunnar carried it as he always did, silently. As they neared the war room, Clora and her 10 elven guards fell in step behind them, their armor gleaming subtly under the artificial lights. Omega, the half-grey, half-dire wolf, padded alongside her, his keen gaze sweeping the halls as if already assessing threats. When they entered, CSM Holt's 20 engineers stood waiting, gear packed and weapons slung. Their expressions were neutral, professional, but the tension in the room was unmistakable. They had been briefed, but nothing could prepare them for what they were about to see. The first shock came when they laid eyes on Clora's elves. The engineers stiffened as they took in the tall, regal warriors, their elegant armor seeming almost otherworldly compared to the human tactical gear. Their disciplined stance and unwavering gazes only added to their unsettling presence. The engineers exchanged glances, whispering under their breath. Then Omega padded in, his massive frame moving with eerie intelligence. One of the younger engineers whispered, "Holy shit." Another muttered, "That's a wolf?" "That's not just a wolf," another corrected. "That's a monster." Omega gave a short huff, amused by their reactions, but it was nothing compared to what came next. Then Alpha entered. The moment his massive frame stepped through the doorway, the room fell into a stunned silence. Twice Omega's size, Alpha was a force of nature, his deep blue eyes gleaming with intelligence and dominance. Some engineers instinctively took a step back. Alpha didn't just exist in the room, he owned it. His gaze swept across them, unblinking, assessing. A low, rumbling growl vibrated from his chest. Not aggressive, just a warning, a reminder of who was in charge. "Jesus," someone breathed. Gunnar let the silence linger before speaking. "You're going to see things you don't understand. You might not like it, but you will follow orders, and you will get the job done." Holt, sensing the moment needed to shift, cleared his throat. "You heard the man. Eyes front. We've got a mission to execute." Gunnar nodded, then turned toward the assembled troops. "We portal in 5. Get your gear ready. We move fast, we move quiet, and we don't take risks. Understood?" Aliena stepped forward, her calm presence commanding attention. "To minimize strain on the teams, I will open a direct portal to Rose first. From there, we will make the final jump to Mirkdust. This will reduce the number of transitions and keep movement efficient." Gunnar gave her a nod. "That saves us a step. Good." Aliena stepped back, raising her hands slightly as the air around her shimmered. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees as arcane energy gathered, swirling in intricate patterns that pulsed with power. The engineers tensed, eyes widening as a brilliant silver-blue rift expanded before them, its edges crackling like contained lightning. "Holy hell," one of them muttered, eyes glued to the glowing vortex. "This isn't like anything I've ever seen," another whispered. "What did you expect? A giant metal ring and some kawoosh?" Derren quipped from the side, grinning. "Sorry, boys, no Stargate here. This is the real deal." The engineers, still staring in awe, seemed torn between fascination and sheer disbelief. Gunnar let them have a moment before stepping forward. "Eyes up. Move with purpose. We step through in formation, no hesitation. If this is your first time using a portal, try not to puke on the other side." Some of the engineers exchanged nervous glances but quickly fell in line, gear secured, faces set with forced determination. Aliena glanced toward Gunnar, waiting for his signal. "Let's move," Gunnar ordered, and without another word he stepped through the portal. The shift through the portal was jarring for those unaccustomed to it. The engineers staggered slightly as they emerged on the other side, blinking against the sudden change in atmosphere. The crisp air of Alfheim's portal chamber greeted them, its ethereal glow casting faint silver hues along the polished stonework. 2 elven guards stood at attention near the control console, their expressions unreadable. At the centre of it all sat Rose, legs crossed, leaning lazily against the console as if she had all the time in the world. Her violet eyes flicked up as Gunnar and the others emerged. "Took you long enough," she drawled, arms crossing over her chest. "What? Did Derren stop for a snack?" Derren smirked, stepping through behind Gunnar. "Nah, had to let the new guys take in the sights. Figured they should get a good look before they start crying." Several engineers shot him a glare, but their attention was quickly pulled to Aliena, who stepped forward toward Rose. "We move quickly," Aliena said. "Open the portal to Mirkdust. We do not waste time." Rose sighed dramatically but moved to the control panel, fingers moving deftly across the enchanted runes. The energy pulsed, responding to her touch, and another portal flared to life. This one a deeper blue with flickers of red surging through its edges. "All right, kids," Rose said, stepping back with a mocking flourish. "Step right up. Next stop, Mirkdust Ruins. Watch your step. Try not to breathe in the dust, and if you see something ugly on the other side, shoot first, ask questions later. Gunnar didn't hesitate. Move. One by one, they stepped through once more into the ruins of Mirkdust.